I want to be very much real with you. For the last couple of months, really been just hearing activity just ramp up in regards to the U.S. making armed engagements or reconnaissance engagements in South America. But it's more focused at that time. It's a bit more focused on Venezuela. It's more focused on Venezuela, and there's a real concern about it. There's actually a real concern if it keeps escalating to where I think it's actually escalating to. Now, as a guy in the Philippines who's just observing things from very afar, how does it concern me? Well, I asked ChatGPT because let's just be real, oil and inflation would definitely be some of the reasons. U.S. Venezuela tensions can shake global oil supply routes as the Philippines imports nearly all its fuel. Any disruption raises gas, transport, and food prices. So you and I in the Philippines could get affected, especially if oil supply gets affected. Basically, gas, transport, anything that gasses up our cars, any mode of transportation and any of the usual foods that we get because we're actually trading with other countries and we're using that oil that we get from the US and Venezuela, either of them. All of these factors get affected. And then there's the thing about forcing the issue upon different nations, getting their opinion, getting their stance, and mind you, their public stance, getting the public stance of other nations. And considering that this is going to definitely affect the Philippines if oil supply is going to be involved in this, there will be the talk in which the US might actually pressure countries like the Philippines in Asia to have the Philippines see the situation in the perspective of America. Basically, echo its sanctions or diplomatic stances. And mind you, even if the Philippines does not like China and Russia, even we we would have a strain when it comes to trade with those countries in particular. Because let's be real, we don't just trade with the United States. We also trade with countries that even we're having issues with. Territorial wise, China is a bit of a pain in the butt, but we also trade with them. We also receive some goods from them via retail as well. So there's that. And then there's the fact of the term narco-terrorism. I'm not sure if that's an actual word. Let me just search up for it. When was this term coined? Oh, okay. So it was coined in 1983 by former Peruvian President Fernando Belon de Terry. He used to describe violent attacks carried out by drug traffickers against his country's police force. It's the drug. Okay, original context. Drug trafficking organizations in Peru and Colombia. Oh, the time of Pablo Escobar. I get it. And then there was an expansion of this term after 9/11 as well. Damn. Shit. So that term has been around for decades now because Pablo Escobar and then terrorist groups. Still, that does not give America all the leeway it should just to try and eliminate narco terrorism in a day, in a week, or whatever, however fast they think the timeline should be. But it's unrealistic, okay? Their use of military resources just to stamp out narco terrorism all at once, or attempting to do that all at once. Their growing use of the military for this. This is going to get messy considering the line between what a formal military action should be against armed groups or against independent parties. Here's what I think, okay? You blur the lines of the rules of engagement towards their term of narco terrorists. It could also blur the lines between the military, the US military, and other entities in particular. Other nation state armies, for example. Basically, it will definitely give them this adrenaline to actually try to get onto other individuals or other entities without express approval. Heck, there's not at this point. I think America doesn't need approval by other countries. They can do it themselves or something. Because let's just be real, attacking certain targets without verification if they are if they are actually civilian or narco, it really scares the heck out of everyone else. Okay, anyone who doesn't even hold a gun in particular. What if those targets, those drug boats, for example, what if they were really just purely civilian boats? What if the intelligence community really just mislabeled them as drug boats? You just think about that for a sec and really just understand that this can go wrong at any time. And yet, the confidence that actually becomes a priority over proper rules of engagement. The U.S. military's actions directed by its chief of staff, it really just sets a bad precedent on what U.S. military policy, how U.S. military policy affects other entities in general. I know it's supposed to counter crime, but let's just also be focused with the fact that the distribution also happens in the United States. Why doesn't Donald Trump improve law enforcement? Because he only likes to show strength. He doesn't like to show that he cares about other people. Okay? He only likes to show strength. He doesn't care about other people within his jurisdiction. Okay? He likes to stamp out the supplier and the manufacturers of the drug trade immediately, without thinking of the possible effects of those same drugs in his own jurisdiction. If this is not considered stupidity times 10, I don't know what is. Honestly, solve local problems first. I can understand where he's going with actually targeting drug trade targets from the source, but it all comes down to one mistake. And if they actually make it, the rest of us common folk who actually transact with any of our friends or any of our enemies economically, any of us can get affected. Economically, it won't do us any good if it escalates to deadly tensions. And hopefully it doesn't come to that. Because if Venezuela's military somehow begins mobilizing, and I'm not sure if they even have if they even care about mobilizing at all, because let's just be real, maybe they're confused. That's what I think. If oil markets or shipping routes fluctuate, remittances and investment inflows to the Philippines could feel aftershocks. Now, even distant conflicts away from me affect my wallet and my geopolitical stability. Considering that the Philippines is dependent on imported energy and U.S. military cooperation. What the U.S. military is doing doesn't set a good tone for how they're supposed to be models as a military force, honestly. What they're showing right now, jeez, they're not being transparent with their actions. They're not even going to allow the media work is supposedly more stationed near military intelligence sites like the Pentagon. They don't even like transparent media to actually to get the inside scoops. Okay? I mean, the only reporting body available in the Pentagon right now in the United States is entirely right-wing propaganda. OAN, for Pete's sake. OAN is the only reporting body that actually remains in the American Pentagon. It's already bad enough that the media cannot get all the details correctly, considering that the media, for some reason, is being forced by the United States to actually. It's just insane. They're forcing them to actually just make sure to speak good about Trump and not speak bad at. That's just not how it works. It's sometimes I cannot even believe what is coming out of Pete Hegseth's mouth. Okay, so yeah, we're up to here when it comes to the U.S. Venezuela tensions. All right, just because of the drug boats thing, the strikes. So. There is this video from CBC News called Why Trump is at War with Venezuela. We're going to be watching this because the Canadians are closely observing this themselves. We don't want shit to escalate. So we need to find out for ourselves why Trump is really waging war with Venezuela. Well, not just the drug trade there. If it comes to the military, goddamn, he is starting things that would actually make a chain reaction. Because let's just be real, even Colombia is starting to feel intimidated of this. It does not sit right with me, guys. It does not sit right with me at all.
September 2nd, a U.S. drone fires a missile at this Venezuelan boat. 11 people on board, all killed. The White House says these were terrorists smuggling drugs. Venezuela calls...
Yeah, after hearing this one in particular, I didn't want to believe anything what the U.S. was saying, because even if they're trying to fight wars like that, you don't do strikes like that without anyone else without it. And it's a good thing they're sharing it too. The thing is, they're not sharing all the specific intelligence that actually confirms that these are actually targets. They might actually frame it that way, but how are they really sure that these are really the trade targets? How are they really sure that these are cartel targets?
Calls it a heinous crime. September 15th, a second Venezuelan boat is hit. 3 people killed. The U.S. warning it is hunting drug traffickers. September 19th, word of another strike. Another 3 people dead. President Trump...
It's happening again and again and again.
Then a 4th strike on October 3rd. 4 people killed. More drug traffickers, says Trump's Secretary of War, just off the coast of Venezuela. And with a familiar warning, these strikes will continue until the attacks on the American people are over.
Until the attacks on American people. I'm sorry, but your boy Donald Trump has to solve your local drug problems much as equally as you are actually. It is just, how is this being allowed, and how is the Venezuelan government feeling about this? Because I don't feel that they're actually feeling good about the United States actually intervening on the problems of Venezuela. I don't feel that the Venezuelans are actually feeling okay with this.
In none of these cases has the Trump administration provided any evidence that the people targeted were terrorists, or that they were carrying out some kind of imminently threatening attack on the United States, or even that there were any drugs on board those boats at all. But what is clear is the U.S. military machine spinning up. Warships that for weeks have been mobilizing and moving towards Venezuela on and under water. Trump has explicitly threatened to attack Venezuela if provoked, as Venezuela itself.
Excuse me? Venezuela criticizes illegal incursion by U.S. fighter jets. Look, coordinate with Venezuela, for Pete's sake. But they have done that. They haven't coordinated with Venezuela at all. Trump just sees Venezuela as a hostile nation. He doesn't even want to try, for some reason, talking to them simply, and then making arrangements in regards to operations against cartels or the drug trade. He doesn't want to do that. It just wants to go straight to post-diplomacy military engagements against targets that resemble the drug trade. Seriously, we're not even being told that these are real narco targets.
Warns the U.S. to stay away. But all told, the U.S. has moved thousands of military members into the region. Their exact intention left unsaid, and against which Venezuela says it is prepared to fight if necessary.
The Trump administration is ramping up its attacks on suspected drug smugglers.
Tensions are escalating between the U.S. and Venezuela.
The Venezuelan army has been training members of the public in the event of a U.S. incursion.
Let's try to understand what threat the U.S. sees and what explains Venezuela's position that Trump is trying to start a war.
The war on drugs.
The stated reason for the Trump administration's repeated airstrikes against civilian, or they would say terrorist, targets basically amounts to a self-defense argument. Venezuelan bad guys, they say, are trafficking illicit drugs to the U.S. by boat. These drugs kill people, and the U.S. has brand...
You know, the language that he's using is not even intelligent either. This is why intelligent people don't like Trump, because everything that he's done is not intelligent. Everything that he's done when it comes to issues is not considered intelligent, and he doesn't want to even learn. He doesn't want to even learn from his mistakes. This sets a bad tone with how he perceives nations. Seriously.
Some of these drug cartels as terrorist organizations. Those two ideas combined, drugs are deadly and drug dealers are terrorists, make the people on board these boats unlawful combatants engaged in armed conflict, which, from the White House point of view, begins to sound more like war than like crime, right? And that specific framing, that war-like language, is important in international law because it forms the legal argument for how you kill drug traffickers without due process and without it being murder.
In recent weeks, the Navy has supported our mission to blow the cartel terrorists the hell out of the water. You see that?
The United States has long, for many, many years, established intelligence that allow us to interdict and stop drug boats. And we did that. And it doesn't work. What will stop them is when you blow them up. The President of the United States is going to wage war on narco-terrorist organizations.
So this is not the first time that we've seen the Trump administration try to blur the lines between drug trafficking and illicit activities with war. So engaging in these strikes and calling them a wartime activity allows Trump to say that we're currently in armed conflict with Venezuela.
But according to the experts we spoke to, there are two problems with seeing this drug war as a literal war. The first has to do with whether this even really meets that bar at all.
These are non-combatants who were firing on U.S. personnel. They weren't attacking U.S. territory. They were very far from U.S. waters.
Right. Like, is this really a war that requires fighter jets, destroyers, and guided missiles? But the other problem has to do with whether these Venezuelan gangs are even the ones smuggling the deadliest drugs into the U.S. in the first place.
That's true.
With fentanyl, no. There's absolutely no evidence of fentanyl production or trade going through Venezuela in any relevant, significant amounts.
The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration's own assessment singles out Mexico, not Venezuela, as the overwhelming supplier of fentanyl to the United States.
TCOs have cemented their role in supplying fentanyl to the United States, as the number of fatal overdoses involving illicit opioids remains high. Seriously, the reason why probably Mexico is not being targeted at the moment, as much as the United States would like to target Mexico because of the drug problems in the United States, I'm seeing that if at a distance, okay, I'm gonna be realistic. Probably the distance. I do not want to mess with Mexico because Mexico itself is armed to the teeth. If America immediately messes with Mexico immediately in things that even if the America should be involved with, they should actually stamp out the problem themselves. If they cross line with military action, military action at all, even if it's not considered warlike, Mexico will retaliate. Venezuela's patience, it's already thinning out, considering that they've already made sure to get civilians covered, to annoy them to the point that they might even consider actually engaging the United States if ever an incursion occurs. Okay, so Mexico was supposed to be the target. For in regards to the drug trade, but America is choosing not to go for Mexico because Mexico will retaliate with deadly force, exacting deadly force against the United States if America makes that humongous mistake. At least that this is right when it comes to not going up against Mexico. But what else? What else is there?
United States. According to the Department of Homeland Security, about 2/3 of the fentanyl it seized in recent years comes from Mexico. So where does Venezuela fit in? Well, according to the U.S. Department of State, predominantly in the trafficking of cocaine, about 10 to 13% of the world's supply. But worth pointing out, cocaine is not the #1 overdose killer in the United States.
Exactly.
Fentanyl, which kills roughly 80,000 Americans each year. Cocaine, less than half that amount. And again, only a small proportion of that attributable to Venezuela. Which brings us back to the original question.
It's the wrong location, wrong destination, wrong drugs. It really does raise a lot of questions of why is the administration doing this?
The U.S. and Venezuela are not friends. Trump has openly accused the Venezuelan government as being infiltrated by terrorist organizations, to the point where, effectively, the head of state is the head of a terrorist organization.
Oh, it's even worse. Oh, that's why.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro,
he thinks Maduro is a terrorist. Oh boy. Look, if Maduro were a terrorist leader, he would have denied civilians their right to even talk about shit. But seriously, this Maduro may be by himself, but that's not. But okay, But at the same time, you know what? I'm just going to continue. I'm not going to.
Narco-terrorist, to even put a bounty on his head, recently doubled to $50 million for any information leading to Maduro's capture.
We're not going to have a cartel operating or just masquerading as a government operating in our own hemisphere.
Venezuela is, in fact, one of very few countries in the world whose leader the U.S. doesn't even officially recognize. Like, I can think of only 3 examples. Taliban in Afghanistan, Alexander Lukashenko in Belarus, and then there's Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela. The U.S. believes he cheated to win the last election, and allowing this and other kinds of criminality risks creating broader problems.
There's a whole nexus of other types of illegality that really, quite frankly, affects not even particularly the United States, but strengthens U.S. enemies, but also weakens regional neighbors, Brazil, Guyana. Other countries are also affected by this illicit economy and commerce that has really grown up in Venezuela under the Nicolas Maduro government and before.
But even in all these regards, Venezuela is not unique. Corruption and authoritarianism are not uniquely Venezuelan problems.
Yes.
So why single them out?
Well, there's a number of interpretations, and one of them, of course, has to do with its oil and mineral wealth.
Venezuela sits
Yeah,
on the world.
exactly. That's what we were suspecting. They have good oil deposits in Venezuela. And if ever there is a conflict that starts between the United States and Venezuela, oil supply is going to get cut up, and civilians who are making use of the oil supply from both countries, they're going to get disrupted. The supply from both countries is going to get disrupted. Oh, shit, dude. Yeah.
World's largest known oil reserves, somewhere in the ballpark of 300 billion.
That, and since Venezuela's absolutely a Chinese partner or a backer, or no. Venezuela has the Chinese as the backers to their economy and to their supplies and to whatever, okay? If Venezuela is attacked, if there's going to even be a formal declaration of war, and even if there's not, what happens to the Philippines? We might get cut off from the oil supply, but the worst thing that happens if there is an armed escalation, the Philippines, considering that it is also a U.S. ally, we would also be affected by China. Heck, to the point that we would be forced to invoke the rights of the rights that we have under the Visiting Forces Agreement. The United States would also respond, but is their military going to arrive in time if China gets to us in the Philippines? That's the question. Considering what is happening here in Venezuela, all bets are off if there is going to be an absolutely messy conflict that starts from there. Because the Philippines would get as vulnerable with China as Venezuela would get vulnerable with the United States if they're not helped by its neighbors. So, yeah, these tensions are real. It is going to affect us here, too.
Barrels of oil, mapped underground and extractable. Not even Saudi Arabia, the world's biggest oil exporter, has reserves this large.
It also has abundant reserves of gold and of other minerals, including rare earth minerals, which are quite important. There's a strategic element in controlling Venezuela and in not letting other superpowers such as China and Russia control Venezuela.
And this is where the Venezuela problem for the U.S. potentially touches on a much bigger issue that isn't really about drugs or regime change at all.
The China factor. Especially China, for Pete's sake.
Think about this triangle of the United States, Venezuela, and a much larger competitor to the U.S. like China. One is that hurting Venezuela hurts China.
Yes.
Consider, for example, that as the U.S. continued to airstrike Venezuelan boats, China picked a side, accusing the U.S. of undermining peace and stability in Latin America and the Caribbean. Exactly. What China doesn't say in that statement is that the U.S. is undermining the peace and stability China is trying to build. Consider that almost all of what Venezuela exports is oil. And Venezuela's
that's right.
biggest buyer of that oil, you guessed it,
China.
Chinese firms have deep stakes in Venezuela's energy sector.
China imported 500,000 barrels of oil per day from Venezuela in February.
Beijing has also lent Maduro's government around $60 billion to help prop up the economy.
It has tens of billions of dollars in investment broadly, in loans, in infrastructure. And so you can certainly make this argument that undermining Venezuela undermines China, but it could also do the opposite.
It's not clear that there is a strategy here. In fact, it's very clear there is no strategy in terms of a new Venezuela.
Really?
Because if history has shown anything at all, it's that decades of bad blood, sanctions, provocative posturing, bounties, criminal charges, maximum pressure.
There's no strategy?
Close to achieving what the U.S. had hoped.
When these sanctions were applied, instead what we saw was kind of a rallying around the Maduro government. And the Maduro government took this as an opportunity to really consolidate its control over its own party and other state institutions.
It didn't work. Maduro's still there. So
yeah, exactly.
Or trying to take out Maduro, it's a really big gamble.
A gamble, too, because maybe hurting Venezuela doesn't hurt China at all. It just pushes the two closer together. And this has already happened. Beijing recently upgrading its relationship with Venezuela to the highest possible level, an all-weather strategic partnership.
Oh, shit.
Which is basically besties, an unconditional, enduring cooperation.
Basically, if Trump starts to slap Maduro or even starts using the knife, China would make absolutely sure. Heck, if Trump starts slapping the heck out of Maduro, Xi Jinping is going to come with a rifle. He is going to come right at Maduro with a rifle, armed, ready to just, yeah. It is hot. And it is hot for all the bad reasons. Okay?
The Maduro government has become increasingly indebted to China in recent years because it has become so much from other countries due to economic sanctions.
Almost all Chinese arms sales to Latin America go straight to Venezuela.
Yep.
Planes, armored vehicles, artillery, anti-ship missiles, weapons flow in, oil flows out. And I'm not saying anything the U.S. government hasn't already figured out for itself. So let's consider one more reason, which might explain why Venezuela.
Why? Consolidating presidential power. Okay, then.
If there's one uncontroversial thing to say about Donald Trump, it's that he understands the value of playing to a crowd.
It's more about performance than about politics. It's about what they're being able to convince their voters that they are doing, and that they're being tough on the people that their voters want them to be tough on.
An important point, I think almost all the experts we spoke to for this story underlined, is how many Venezuelans live in the United States, and primarily in the state of Florida, a major swing state where in some cities almost half of the population is Venezuelan.
So basically, if there's a voter base of Venezuelans already in the United States, if the United States starts attacking Venezuela, the Venezuelan immigrants in the United States are absolutely going to hate Donald Trump. They're absolutely going to hate Donald Trump and the United States government. They wouldn't even start to vote in favor of any politician. They would just go up against the U.S. government entirely.
And overwhelmingly anti-Maduro.
Wait a minute. Most Americans oppose military involvement in Venezuela? Oh, shit. Even more Americans are uncertain in their evaluations of Maduro than are unsure about Venezuela. Oh, my God.
If you ask Americans, what do you think of Venezuela's president? Among the 50% who have an opinion, 44 out of 50 dislike him.
44 out of 50 dislike him.
Venezuela has plummeted into political and economic calamity following decades of corruption.
Nicolas Maduro is an indicted drug trafficker in the United States justice.
Rubio.
Oh, how would you know? Have you been there? Have you talked to him? Huh?
Drug trafficker in the United States, and he's a fugitive of American justice.
I wouldn't trust anything that you would say because your face doesn't seem right, your mouth doesn't speak truth. Probably.
Rubio pushed for the maximum pressure strategy on Venezuela in the first administration, and I think that he really now wants to finish the job. And he has a lot of power and authority himself in the administration.
And you could extract many versions of this point as upsides to making a punching bag of Venezuela. Is it about exploiting the weakness of a socialist state?
Comrade Kamala announced that she wants to institute socialist price controls. You saw that. Never worked before, never ever worked. This is the Maduro plan.
Or is it about consolidating power in a way that helps achieve other parts of Trump's agenda?
Perhaps the most important related to recent challenges the government has faced using the Alien Enemies Act to deport Venezuelans in the United States. But since he's faced multiple challenges in the courts, largely having to do with the fact that we are not in military or war conflict with Venezuela. So provoking or even just performing a military conflict off of Venezuela's coast.
Yes, exactly. Performing military actions of any kind on Venezuelan coast will provoke a response. It will make a provocation. If it's an armed provocation, yeah, hope that both sides talk it out. Otherwise, all hell breaks loose.
Could provide evidence for the Trump administration that we are at war with Venezuela when the Supreme Court picks up this case again, right? So it provides Trump another weapon in his arsenal to deport without due process.
But you can game those kinds of things out infinitely. A much simpler explanation for these American attacks on Venezuela is that they show strength applied with impunity. It's a powerful message, a powerful deterrent, and a powerful example for anyone and everyone watching.
This is absolutely going to really be a messy thing if it does escalate into an all-out war. And even if the actual conflict would actually happen, just be real, guys. Apektado rin ang Pilipinas. We would be seeing a multiplication of inflation in regards to food prices, when it comes to gas prices, when it comes to transportation prices. This locality itself might actually be annoyed of those, but it is all because oil supply is getting disrupted. And the Philippines is only one of the countries buying out oil, okay? We also get some of the oil from China. I'm not sure if we're getting some of the oil from China, but yep. We're also getting petroleum. We're also getting petroleum products from China as well. So, oh my God, this is Trump imposed sharp tariffs on countries buying Venezuelan oil. Anyways, so correction: the Philippines does not buy oil from Venezuela. If the Philippines isn't buying oil from Venezuela, how does the Philippines get affected if there's armed conflict between America and Venezuela? An armed conflict between the United States and Venezuela could affect Philippines through global economic volatility, a potential shift in geopolitical dynamics involving China. Yes, exactly. We're buying oil from China. And considering that Venezuela is exporting oil to China, if Venezuela gets into a conflict, we're going to be feeling it eventually. The strain on U.S.-Philippine alliance. Depending on the scale, a protracted U.S. conflict could stretch U.S. military resources, potentially affecting its ability to fully respond to threats in the Indo-Pacific under the Mutual Defense Treaty. And a visiting forces agreement as well. Okay? Let's just be real about this. Okay? It is volatile to the point that even Filipinos are going to get affected of this, because let's just be real. We have the U.S. and the Philippines have military cooperation, but we're also buying oil from China because we cannot buy oil directly from Venezuela. And considering that the U.S. is actually putting tariffs on the Philippines, well, not exactly putting tariffs immediately, because I think the tariffs thing has been halted for a bit, but let's just be real. If Trump is going to do that, and is capable of doing that, because considering that he is president, we're gonna start to have problems with America. We already have problems with China in regards to territory, but we're still buying up their oil. So basically, someone's making us Filipinos shut up when it comes to our territorial problems with China. But if there is a conflict between the United States and Venezuela, it might be that all bets are off. We're going to be cut off from China entirely, and that we might get invaded. And the United States might not even be able to help us. So basically, we're screwed. As Filipinos, let's just be real. If we let the conflict happen between Venezuela and the United States, us Filipinos here, we'll feel the pinches on the prices first, and then eventually if China decides to actually get to go against us and invade us, we're basically screwed. The United States will not be easily helping us, not at the speed at how things are going. So, yeah.